Now we go to Israel. Students from seminar Hakibutzim tell us about life in Tel Aviv during the pandemic.
So much has changed since the COVID-19 pandemic entered to our lives and bringing many changes to our way of life. We all had to adjust and learn how to live the new normal. How did it happen? Follow me. As students, we spent this last year studying online. We took our lessons from our desks at home and sometimes from our beds. The pandemic caused some financial stress and difficulties. The Israeli people have shown amazing solidarity and many came to volunteer and contribute. We've met the agenda community and they told us about their activity.
אז הקורונה השפיעה בהמון דברים. הדבר הראשון בעצם זה הבידוד והריחוק החברתי שהיה מן הסתם בכל המדינה ובכל עיר, אבל גם בעיר אשקלון. בעצם בתקופה שהיינו הכי מגובשים והקהילה רק גדלה וגדלה וגדלה, בום, הקורונה הגיעה והפסיקה הכל.
אבל מצד שני המשכנו להתנדב.
הם היו בעצם מבודדים בבית, והדבר השני שהגיע זה בעצם ההתנדבויות, והם רק עלו.
אנשים היו הולכים וקונים תרופות, קונים מצרכים, הולכים לבית וזורקים לאנשים זבל, כל מיני דברים שאנשים היו צריכים בהם עזרה בזמן הקורונה, אנשים מבוגרים, אנשים שהיו בבידוד.
אנחנו עכשיו עושים כזה סוג של ריפרש ומנסים בעצם לקדם את הקהילה בעיר, להכיר אותו לעוד אנשים שבעצם הצטרפו לעיר, אנשים חדשים שהגיעו לעיר.
אג'נדה זה קהילה שהקמנו עם כמה חבר'ה צעירים, לפתח יותר פעילויות פנאי ותרבות, וגם מצד שני לתת הזדמנות לצעירים להתנדב ולתרום לעיר.
ובקורונה זה ממש בא לידי ביטוי של כמה שצעירי העיר, כמה שקשה להם והם עמוסים בלימודים ואין להם עבודה והם צריכים לפרנס את עצמם, ועדיין הם יכולים לתת יד ולבוא לעזור.
אני מתנדבת כי אני רוצה לתת מעצמי דבר ראשון, כי אני מרגישה שכשאתה נותן מעצמך, אז זה חוזר אליך כפול 10.
אנחנו אג'נדה, ואנחנו מחפשים אתכם. הצטרפו אלינו, וביחד נעשה שינוי.
During COVID-19, many restaurants were forced to close their gates and switch to take-out and delivery system, changing most of their work order and flow. Was the change worth the while? Did the products keep the quality during the delivery? We went outside and checked with the local restaurant owners.
תקופת הקורונה גרמה לשינויים בהמון עסקים. ביניהם היו המסעדות שהתמודדו עם ההגבלות ונאלצו למצוא פתרונות יצירתיים להכנסה על מנת להחזיק את המסעדה עובדת.
היו פה ימים שמכרתי 10 מנות ביום, מ-9:30 בבוקר, 9:30 בערב, ויושב ומחכה.
הקורונה הכניסה את בעלי העסקים למקום שהם חייבים לקבל החלטות מיידיות. וכמו שסתיו מספר לנו, בעיקר בשביל לשרוד.
נשארנו לעבוד רק עם משלוח, רק עם משלוחים. זה כמו שתכנסי לסופר וילך לשתות רק מים. צריכי לקנות מים, לא תוכלי לקנות פתאום קולה או דברים כאלה. אז אם אפשר לעבוד, אז שורדים. אם אפשר לעבוד רק עם משלוחים או טייק-אווי בשושו, אז עושים את זה.
בימים שהם רגילים לכולנו לפני הקורונה, העבודה עם שירותי משלוחים אמורה להיות גב תומך כלכלית למסעדה. סוג של הכנסה נוספת.
היה לנו 1.5 או 2 שעבדנו עם משלוחים. לא הסתדרנו עם זה. אחרי 2 פשוט החלטתי שאפשר להוריד את זה. ובקורונה חזרנו. בגדול.
עם החזרה בגדול הגיע גם הצורך בפרסום נוסף.
שלטי חוצות בעיר, אם זה עיתונים, אם זה פייסבוק, אינסטגרם. רשת קצת עוזרת בקידומים, אבל בעיקרון הפרסום הוא צריך להיות ממש אינטנסיבי ברמה של לא להוריד את הרגל מהגז. בעיקרון המטבח הוא באמת קטנצ'יק, אבל התפעול שלו לבד הוא מאוד מאוד קשה, כי אין מנה שלא עוברת, לא צריכה איכות של שתי הפסים כאילו. אז סתם עשיתי סלט הום פרייז, את ההום פרייז אני צריך לשים אותו בפס חם, ואז להעביר אותו לפס קר. בעיקרון שינינו הכל, ובמקום צלחות היה פה תמיד קופסאות. וההוצאה פתאום הייתה שונה, כי אין לי מה להגיע לקצה ההוא, אז הייתי צריך לשים את זה פה. זה היה מאתגר, נחמד, שתפנו המון מחבטות.
כשהתחלתם לעבוד עם שירות המשלוחים, הייתה איזושהי חשיבה או השקעה במשלוח עצמו, בנראות שלו?
בהתחלה לא. המטרה הייתה באמת להוציא אוכל טרי, אוכל טוב, פסטות מבושלות, סלטים טריים, ולא היה בעצם את הנקודה הזאת של לנסות להעביר את המסעדה לבית של הלקוח, שזה בעצם רוב השינוי בקורונה והתכלית של המשלוחים.
האם היה איזשהו משהו שגרם לייעל את עניין המשלוחים?
הכל נעשה באמת מדוד על השנייה עם פינצטה, לאיך דברים צריכים לצאת, איך דברים צריכים להיראות, איך אתה אורז אותם, להביא כלי אריזה שהם הרבה יותר מושכים ומגרים קודם כל את העין ואת החך, ואחרי זה לנסות לפגוע בטעמים. כמובן, לנסות להתאים את עלות המשלוח למצב הנתון שלנו. פותח את השקית ומוציא קופסה שנראה טוב, או שקית, או כל דבר אחר שהוא בפנים, הוא ארוז בצורה יפה, אסתטית, לא מרוחה ברוטב, הכל צריך לעמוד שם באמת כמו פלס. כשהוא פותח את השקית ומקבל את הגל הראשוני של האוכל, זה לדעתי הדירוג הראשון שלו, הראשון. אז כאילו כל מה שנשאר להם, ממש מארז נחמד כזה, בלי כל הסלסלות והשטויות. פותחים, פתחנו, שמנו, והתחלנו לאכול. נראה מרשים, אבל גם עולה הרבה.
זה באמת משתלם בסוף?
כשאני עובד עם גוף חיצוני, והוא אומר לי, אני לוקח לך 20% מהמשלוח, סבבה, כשיהיה לי 20%, אתה תקבל.
סתיו, כמו שאר בעלי המסעדות, חוו את הקשיים הנפשיים, אך עדיין נראה שיש מקום לאופטימיות.
אבא שלי אמר לי, אחרי הסגר הראשון, שפתחנו בין הסגר הראשון לשני, הוא סיפר לי, והוא לא מספר לי הרבה דברים, הוא אומר לי שכשהוא היה מתקשר אליי, זה היה כמו רולטה מבחינתו, הוא לא יודע אם הוא יתקשר אליי ואני אצעק, אם אני אצחק, אם אני עצוב, אם אני... אז זה ככה, אבל בסדר. לאט לאט זה עובר ואתה מתרגל למצב, ודברים מסתדרים בסוף, אם אתה באמת רוצה שהם יסתדרו.
This past year has been a little bit complex for those who are single. With social distancing and quarantines, many felt loneliness, and dating became even more difficult. Sam took initiative and went dating on Zoom, asked them about their online meetings and if they made it on a second date.
טוב, אז נתחיל.
יאללה.
האם הקורונה משפיעה על המצב הרגשי שלך בזוגיות?
כן הרגיש לי יותר בודד. גם אני חושבת שזה בעצם העובדה שגם לא יכולתי לראות את חברות שלי, ליטרלי לראות אנשים במו עיניי.
באופן כללי, המצב רוח הלאומי והאישי הייתה די אווירת נחיים לדעתי. כאילו, אני לא חושב שאנשים היו בטוב. משפיע על הביטחון, כי אתה גם לא נראה טוב, בדרך כלל אחרי מלא זמן בבית, אתה לא עושה יותר מדי, וגם אצלי באופן אישי, גם כשגרתי אצל ההורים, אז זה גם הפריע לי בדימוי העצמי שלי.
3 דברים שחשובים לך בבת זוג.
משיכה, שהתקבל אותי, עניין.
חוכמה, טוב לב, נכונות.
כנות, פתיחות וחוש הומור.
חברות, אינטימיות וצחוקים, אני יודע.
ביטחון עצמי, כריזמה ואינטליגנציה.
מה הוביל אותך לדייטים בזום? איך הגעת לזה?
היו אילוצים, כאילו אין טוב ממראה עיניים, אז אמרנו בסדר, נעשה דייט בזום.
לפני שהתחילה הקורונה הייתי חבר בקבוצות כאלה שיותר ארגנו באמת מפגשים פרונטליים, ועם הקורונה אז גם הם העלו את זה.
היה אירוע בזום, שזה כזה אירוע היכרויות, זה רק לאנשי הייטק, אבל זה רק כדי לאסוף אנשים מועמדים לעבוד אצלם.
בגדול, זו הייתה האלטרנטיבה היחידה בתקופה שלא היו דייטים. כאילו, באותה תקופה גם לא גרתי בתל אביב, אז בכלל, את כזה יותר בפריפריה, אין לך אופציות. האנשים היחידים שאת רואה זה השליח מהסופר.
תספרי לי כזה על הדייט הראשון.
את ממוינת לקבוצה על סמך טווח גילאים ואזור גיאוגרפי בארץ והעדפות דתיות כזאת, כן? במשך שבוע את מדברת עם whatever 6 גברים בזומים קצרים, ואז יש איזה 2 שאת יכולה לבחור להעמיק איתם וזה, ובהתחלה זה גם בלי מצלמה.
היה גם מישהו שכזה דיברנו בווידאו דרך הבמבל, יש כזה אופציה לנהל שיחת וידאו, ואיזה מזל שעשינו את זה.
בחורה שהכרתי נראה לי, אוקיי, קיופיד או טינדר או במבל, זה לא משנה כי כולם באותן אפליקציות.
מה עושים בדייט של 2 שעתיים?
זה כאילו בדיוק הדרך לבדוק אם יש לך משהו עם מישהו, בלי הדברים שברקע.
נטפליקס פארטי זה תוסף לגוגל כרום שמתחבר לך לנטפליקס, ואת יכולה לראות סדרה עם בן אדם אחר. יש חלון של צ'אט כאילו תוך כדי שאתם יכולים לדבר.
קרה לי גם באמצע דייט עם מישהו אחר התקשר, ואני כזה ניתקתי, פשוט הסתכלתי, ניתקתי.
הוא קבע איתי זום, ואני כאילו מגיעה שעה שקבענו, אני מתחברת לזום, והבן אדם הבריז לי מדייט בזום, שזה העולב הכי גדול של חיי, כאילו מי מבריז מדייט בזום.
איך מתארגנים לדייט כזה?
לדייט בזום, לובשים חולצה יפה, כי מכנסיים אפשר גם טרנינג כאילו.
הייתה עם פיג'מה ואני הייתי בגדים מכובדים.
בגלל שגרתי אצל ההורים, אז היה לסגור את הדלת, לדאוג שהסביבה תהיה שקטה, לדאוג שיהיה מספיק אור, לדאוג שזה ייראה כן קצת מסודר ונורמלי, ולא שאני חי באיזה דיר חזירים, למרות שאני לא טיפוס כזה בכלל.
בלחץ, שמת חולצה שאין עליה כתם היום, במקרה הטוב, רקת על עצמך איזה לובלו כזה, סבבה. אוקיי, את מוכנה לדייט בזום.
באיזו גישה הגעת לזה?
למה לא? כאילו, מה יש לי להפסיד?
למצוא אהבה.
כבר מצאתי זוגיות במקומות מאוד מאוד הזויים, אז אמרתי לעצמי, יש הכל בחיים.
באיזה שלב הרגשת אם יש כימיה או אין כימיה, אם יש משיכה, איך בודקים בכלל את הדברים האלה בדייט מרחוק?
מה שאני כאילו משתמש בו כאינדיקטור זה פשוט כאילו בשיח לגמרי, זאת אומרת, כמה אנחנו מדברים וכמה כל אחד מהצדדים יוזם את השיחה הזאת.
יש משיכה של האם אני רוצה לדבר, האם אני רואה את הבן אדם הזה, הוא עושה לי טוב, הוא עושה לי כיף, ובא לי לדבר איתו, ובא לי לפתח איתו משהו. ויש משיכה שאתה כבר לא יכול בלי.
שפת גוף, ומהחוויה שלך של הבן אדם, וזה משהו שמאוד מאוד קשה להעביר אותו דרך המסך, כי אתה רואה באמת רק חלק מאוד מסוים מהגוף, והרבה פעמים אנחנו גם קצת יותר נראה לי קפואים כאלה כשאנחנו מול המסך, אז זה לא לגמרי טבעי לנו עדיין.
בפועל צריך את הפגישה הזאת, כי יש איזשהו משהו לא יודעת, בריח, במגע, באינטראקציה, שכאילו אין תחליף לדבר הזה.
מה רמת הביטחון שמגיעים לדייט וירטואלי?
זה פחות מלחיץ מאשר להגיע למקום.
פחות, מרגיש יותר בנוח פנים אל פנים.
היה לי בסך הכל נעים לעשות את זה, לקבל איזושהי הצצה קטנה לבית ולחיים של הבן אדם.
אני אדם נכה. של נכים זה נראה לי עוד יותר מוצלח, אני חושב שזה הדרך הנכונה, להודיע לפני כן שאתה נכה. לא להגיע ושהיא תהיה מופתעת ופתאום תהיה במצב שקשה לה עם עצמה, כי היא לא מבינה למה היא הגיעה לדייט עם אדם נכה והיא לא יודעת מראש.
גובה, משקל, דברים מסוימים שאי אפשר לראות בתוך הריבוע הזה, מדברים על הדברים האלה?
אז אני אומר תקומי, תעשי 360 מעלות. סתם, לא באמת, לא באמת.
קצת בן אדם מיוחד, אבל אצלי ספציפית אין לי טייפ. אז נגיד, משקל פחות מפריע לי, אבל גובה כן, כל מי שלא מציין, אז בטוח הוא נמוך. כמה נמוך, לא יודעת. ואני שואלת, פשוט כאילו תמיד זה גם לפני הדייט, כי אני אומרת את זה בצורה כזאת חמודה, אני אומרת, תקשיב, אני מתלבטת אם לבוא עם עקבים, אז רק תגיד לי כאילו מה...
שהיא נגיד כמה להביא כוס שתייה או כמה לשירותים, אז כן כזה תפסתי את הרגע כזה לנסות להסתכל.
יצא לך להמשיך דייטים מסוימים למציאות?
המציאות הייתה קצת נפילה, כי כאילו כבר, את יודעת, בנית איזה סוג של מחשבה בראש שלך. ואז במציאות הוא נראה קצת יותר גרוע ממה שחשבת, וכאילו יש דיסוננס בין מה שרצית שזה יהיה למה שזה באמת.
כי באמת יש דברים שלא כל כך עברו בזום, כמו למשל פער הגבהים ביניהם, לצורך העניין. אני בכללי גבר נמוך.
הווייב והמזג של הבן אדם אתה כן מקבל מושג, אבל עדיין כשאתה פוגש בן אדם במציאות, כל הקלפים נטרפים, אין מה לעשות.
אתה מאמין באהבה בזום? אתה חושב שזה משהו שהוא יכול לקרות?
אז אני חושב שאם משהו נועד לקרות, הוא יקרה גם עם כמה שהמצב הוא פחות אידיאלי.
באמת אין מה להפסיד, כי כאילו כבר ניסינו הכל.
במילה אחת, דייטים בזום בתקופת הקורונה?
רוע הכרחי.
למה לא?
ברירת מחדל.
נחמד, אני יודע.
בהצלחה שיהיה לך.
So, Gali, what is the latest COVID situation like in Israel?
I'm a high school teacher in Jaffa, and 3 of my students from my class were found with coronavirus. And I didn't have any physical contact with them, but I needed to isolate myself. And all of that happened 2 weeks before of my sister's wedding, and I felt very stressful. I needed to pass 2 tests and I needed to pass 2 tests for COVID-19 to get out from the quarantine and back to normal. This situation prevented me for coming back to my apartment in Tel Aviv, and I needed to stay in my parents' house, and they live far away from Tel Aviv, and I needed to cancel my shifts at work. And it was very difficult for me, and I guess I'm not just the only one that happened to her. Many people get into isolation in this stressful time, and it's very not easy, and I very wanted to come back to my routine. And this is what this is the latest COVID situation I was. That's it.
I see. So thank you, Gali.
Thank you, Gali.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
We now go over to the UK to Leeds Trinity University in West Yorkshire to learn how COVID has changed lives there.
Hello and welcome to Leeds Trinity University's section of the Global News Relay here in Great Britain. Your anchors for the next few minutes are me, Mark Singleton.
And me, Jalut Andila. Coming up in the show today, how one dental practice in Wales has been dealing with missing staff forced to isolate from COVID-19, the health enthusiasts in Essex who are fighting lockdown laziness and improving their fitness while stuck at home, and the entrepreneurs in Manchester that have seen their sales soar as people turn to shopping more online.
Now for our first story, we begin with schools, and whilst many young children have had a rough year with online teaching and masks in class, the fallout from these changes has also affected the young adults who are hoping to be the teachers of the future. Without a blanket national policy on whether student teachers should be going into classrooms, the experience they get is largely dependent on where they go to university. Jessica Bailey reports.
Some university students who are set to complete teaching placements are still going in despite their own face-to-face teaching being suspended during England's national lockdown, as schools remain open to some pupils. I spoke to Rebecca Kedge, who is a student still completing her placement.
So there's quite a lot of pressure to because it is our first block placement and we haven't done one before this, so it's quite intense trying to make sure that we're teaching enough and yeah. I do appreciate being able to go in and teach face to face because I'm getting the experience, but it is just rubbish having to be online for uni. I'm doing 2 COVID tests a week, so one on the Sunday and one on the Wednesday, and they both have to be negative for me to be able to go in.
Although some students like Rebecca have been able to continue with their teaching placements in person, others are doing theirs virtually. I spoke to Edward Peel, who shared his thoughts on teaching from home.
So bizarre just trying to get used to it and get into the swing of things, because you have a certain set routine when you're in school. So when you're taken out of that environment, it's quite hard to adapt and get used to sort of teaching online. For all the children to adapt as well, we're finding it quite difficult for them. But overall, I'd say everyone's doing quite well at the moment.
Hopefully the next academic year will see all teaching students back on placement. Back to you in the studio.
Looking forward to see all the kids going back to school. Thank you for that, Jessica. Next up, we turn to Pembrokeshire, Wales. Our reporter Bethan Case has been finding out how about dental practice forced to cope with a vital member of staff isolating at home due to suffering an underlying health condition. She's one of the many vulnerable key workers asked by the government to self-isolate from COVID-19.
Dental practice manager Joanne Case received a letter from the government asking her to shield at home. Shielding is a form of self-isolating for the clinically vulnerable. I spoke to Joanne to hear how she felt.
Having to shield, I found it really hard. I work in a small dental hygiene practice. There's only 3 of us, so not being able to go in, I feel quite guilty.
I spoke to Joanne's colleagues, Sarah, the leading dental hygienist and the owner, and Roseanne, a practicing dental nurse, on how they are coping without their practice manager.
It's very stressful. Less patients means less money. My business suffers. PPE is trebled in price. We're down 1 staff, which is vitally important in my small business, as there's only 3 staff. So 2 staff have to do absolutely everything.
Working during COVID has affected my training, as my exams, my dental nurse training has been cancelled and pushed back, meaning that I won't get qualified for longer. So busy they can't take the time to train me.
The top priority risk groups have hit target for the vaccine, and now the government are moving on to key workers. Joanne is feeling hopeful for her return to work.
Been given a date for the vaccine. I will be able to go back, but I'll still have to be careful.
Joanne is keen to go back to work, and as she waits, she is taking up bacon. While she may feel guilty for not being in work, she is keeping her family happy with all the cheesecakes.
I think everyone baked during lockdown. Some sport now. And whilst the COVID-19 pandemic has been tough for many industries, sports clubs have particularly struggled with restrictions stopping many from playing. I've been looking at how one smaller club in North Yorkshire has been pushing through lockdown on top of their battle with other forces of nature.
Tadcaster Albion have faced several challenges due to the pandemic with regards to the league and other aspects of the game. I spoke with the chairman, Andy Charlesworth, to get his view on the situation.
The impact on the club is obviously we've had no income, but the FA have put measures in place to assist us. There's also various council grants that we've applied for. It's just very, very challenging.
I then wanted to find out about the challenges that they have faced with flooding.
The flood defence options they've looked at is I think there's about 5 options to increase in various areas the heights of the flood defences that will protect various properties. There's only one that protects the club better than it is now. So obviously everybody's involved with the club, and the local area around the club is pushing for that.
Been pretty dire, to be honest. There's almost no football to watch. And although the Albion were able to make a start to this, the spectators were limited. So it's a long way from the atmosphere that you actually go for.
With how things have been improving recently, hopefully the club will be able to return to scenes like these in the near future.
Thank you for that, Mark. Let's hope that they will be able to get back on the pitch again soon. Now, while the theatre industry here in England is still on hold, on the Isle of Man, a small island in the Irish Sea, the musical theatre community has already been springing back into action after coming completely out of lockdown. Laura Bovanazza has more.
Whilst the theatres of the West End lay quiet, much like this one at the moment, no social distancing on the COVID-free Isle of Man means the show will soon be back on. In-person rehearsals have started again for Shrek the Musical, and the cast and crew are happy to be there.
The theatre's been closed for a year, and it's really nice that
Actually, we're in a really privileged position right now to be rehearsing, being in a creative environment. There's so many people want to be in right now, so I think just appreciating every moment that we get here right now.
I think it's made us appreciate having everyone nearby, because we tried a couple of rehearsals on Zoom and things like that. It's not the same. You can't get the same atmosphere, you can't bounce off the other characters as much as you do when you're here in person. Yeah, so it does make a huge difference, and it does make us appreciate it in a big, big way.
But even with restrictions lifted, it's not been an easy road to get here. The team at the Gated Theatre have had to deal with the circuit breaker lockdown in January and the public's concern about returning to an enclosed space.
Obviously, a lot of the UK shows have had to be cancelled, so we ended up with some spare dates. So for something like Shrek, for example, it was just a lot of positive energy from both the production company and our team to make sure that the dates could be rescheduled. When we reopened in June, when the venue was allowed to be reopened, we didn't actually put any shows on till about middle of August. And I think by then local people had got their confidence back because it was summertime, they were out, they're going to restaurants, parties, pubs, whatever.
With the show a few months from being ready for the stage and another COVID outbreak still an ever-present threat to the island, the theatre community here have their fingers crossed that an opening night audience will be filling these seats again very soon.
Lovely to see that. But here now with an update on the situation from the Isle of Man is Noah. Hi Noah, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you for taking your time to come to us and give us an update. So tell us, what is the update on this situation?
Well, as you can see, I'm back at home in the office. I'm not out and about anymore like I was in the video. So we have had an outbreak over here. Unfortunately, we've had a spike in cases. So we are currently back in basically a complete lockdown.
Right. Do you think that that schedule are going to be able to go ahead?
At the moment, it's not looking great for the original kind of planned opening date for the show, because obviously, even if we do open up in time, they'll have missed quite a few weeks of rehearsal, which are really essential, especially getting into the theatre just before the show starts. So it's not looking great, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, I'm really sorry to hear about that. I feel like people are really disappointed. Would you agree with me?
Yeah, definitely. I think people are kind of feeling like maybe this one could have been avoided. We've actually had worse cases this time than we did even back last year in March.
I can imagine. And again, you had that whole month free without lockdown, and now you're just back in lockdown. It's a bit miserable. But thank you again, Noah, for telling us the updates. Thank you.
Yeah.
And next, with a recent survey finding that 48% of people in the UK have put on weight over the national lockdown, it's clearer than ever that the pandemic had a big impact on people's fitness as they stay stuck indoors. However, many are determined to reverse this trend and have found the ways to keep fit at home, as I find out. During the second lockdown in Manchester, 23-year-old Deborah has lost 10 kilos through intermittent fasting and the motivation from her family.
I wake up, I go on my daily walk. I try to do 10,000 steps a day. And on the days where, for example, I'm really tired, I do 5,000 steps. And I've also implemented skipping, so rope skipping. And I do that 2 to 3 times a week, and I feel like I don't do much. I do like 10 minutes because it's very hard. I feel more when I eat nicely and healthily, I feel more energized, so I wake up early with a bit more energy.
In Essex, working out and dieting was not the only thing that people did to lose weight in lockdown. I spoke to 26-year-old Faye, who from obsessively counting her calories, she has finally established a better relationship with food.
My focus is building strength and muscle, which I have done. I'm in the best shape I ever have been, and I used to dance, but you know, at the moment I'm like the best shape. I easily hit my five a day fruit and veg now, whereas before I was lucky to even get 1. My ultimate goal would be to get to a place where I can actually then help others and help people who have been in my place previously, where they've not really known where to start and how to get to a place where they're happier and healthier.
Even with closed gyms and dietitian not working full time, people have still found the pleasure to get a healthy lifestyle. With gyms reopening hopefully soon, it shouldn't be much longer that we have to work out at home.
I might have to give that a try sometime. Moving to the City of Manchester now for our final story, as we look at how some independent businesses have made the most of the consumer habits over lockdown, with many shoppers turning to online stores as high streets close. Some entrepreneurs have seen their sales soar in the last year. Maisie Lawton has more.
Unlike thousands of staff throughout the UK who have been furloughed or made redundant because of the pandemic, the staff here at Creative in Manchester have been rushed off their feet. That's because it's an online business dealing with gaming products, which have been in great demand with teenagers stuck at home during lockdown.
The sales have gone up by almost a couple thousand. A lot more people are sat at home doing nothing, so they're looking to spend the money on activities such as gaming consoles, which has been really good for Creative. We're selling everything to do with consoles, gaming headsets. It's impacted the business well.
University of Manchester student Kelly Flatley has also been busy with her online business making candles.
Sold maybe over 100 now, and I think it would have been as successful if it wasn't for COVID, because people are looking for things like my candles to fill the space, and so that's really helped the business.
With many businesses forced to close their doors permanently due to coronavirus, it seems those which have kept pace with modern shopping trends are the ones who will continue to have a healthy future.
Great to be ending with some good news there. Thank you, Maisie. And that brings us to the end of our section today here at Leeds Trinity.
Thank you so for joining us and roving our reporters across the British Isle. Enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye.
And now we have Noah Bovanezer joins us now from Leeds Trinity University. Noah, in your video, I noticed that the student teacher in the first story took her own sample for COVID test. So are these home COVID tests common in the UK, and do the health authorities recognise the results?
Yeah, so they are quite common now. They're what they call rapid lateral flow tests is the term for them. And they're just like quick 30-second little handheld tests that you can do at home. And they're quite useful for, obviously, like you saw, the student teachers, and for kind of if you're going into work, like in the office, they want people to take them. It's just like kind of a quicker way to do it. But they are recognised by the government and by the health authorities. But if you get a positive result, then they ask you to immediately self-isolate, and within 3 days you have to go to a test centre and do it's called a PCR test. It's takes a little bit longer, just to double check, because they're quite small, the lateral flow ones. They're quite reliable, but they're not 100% reliable. So if you get a positive test, they want you to kind of check again just to make sure. But yeah, they're really useful over here. They're making them available for free for quite a lot of people, because they just want as many people to test as possible.
I see. So Noah, it's really nice to see all those happy people dancing in your story from the Isle of Man, and I believe that's where you spent time during your lockdown. So, but I noticed that they seem to be quite relaxed about social distancing and mask wearing. So, is that generally the case across the UK now?
Yeah, well, like you saw on the Isle of Man there, when that was filmed, that was on the Isle of Man. So the Isle of Man is a separate island to the rest of the UK. It's like self-governing as well, so it kind of has its own COVID rules, and because it's quite a small island, we managed to kind of separate from the rest of the world. Like, we didn't really let people come in. So when you saw that video was filmed when there was basically no cases, so there was no rules on anything, and which is why everyone is so relaxed. But since then, there has been further lockdowns. But the good news for the show that you saw is that they are kind of COVID-free again on the Isle of Man, so they've got new dates in May, so hopefully that should all be going ahead. But in terms of the rest of the UK and the British Isles, we're getting there, where we're almost at that point where it's a bit more open, but it's not quite like you saw in the Isle of Man yet. There is still masks. You're not really meeting people indoors. At the moment, you can go to restaurants, you can go outside. We're quite heavy. We've done quite well with the vaccinations. I think we're like top 5 in the world in terms of percentage of people with at least one dose of the vaccine. But I think June is at the moment when they're saying that maybe we'll get to the point that you saw like on the Isle of Man, but
yeah, the UK is still not quite there yet. We are still kind of socially distancing, keeping masks on indoors and things like that.
Thank you, Noah.
Thank you, Noah.
No problem.
We stay in the UK and we go to the University of Salford for the report.
Hello and welcome to the University of Salford at the heart of Media City UK, home to the BBC and ITV.
And you're watching Keys News.
With this year's theme of COVID-19 and post-pandemic life, we're looking into several topics and talking to people about their experiences living in the pandemic.
But first, the COVID-19 pandemic has affected many young people due to the lack of socialising. One 24-year-old has set up an Instagram account to unite young people through their mental health experiences called Strength in Stories. Sitara Bartle has more.
The COVID-19 pandemic has put a huge strain on many young people who are already struggling with their mental health.
I was basically just watching TV and just in an instant, suddenly my sort of everything flipped. Felt like I'd almost lost control of my mind.
Mental health struggles arise for different reasons. This may include traumatic experiences, social isolation, loss of routine, and even a breakdown in formal and informal support. A study conducted by Young Minds found that 80% said the coronavirus pandemic had made their mental health worse, 41% said the coronavirus pandemic had made their mental health much worse, 87% felt lonely or isolated during the lockdown period. Dan didn't let his feelings get the better of him. He set up an Instagram account called Strength in Stories. It allows young people to share their mental health challenges. They are reassured they're not alone. Alex Thomas contributed his story to the page. He was challenged when he stopped swimming competitively after injury. He acknowledges the page's importance.
Everyone can get the flu, right? So everyone can struggle mentally, and it really provides with a sense of comfort that you're not the only one out there.
Dan spent hours searching the internet for stories of people who had faced similar mental health challenges. He would cling to the few success stories like a lifeline. However, there was no one single place where he could turn to. Thus, the idea for the Instagram account arose. He wants to show that people can live successful lives with mental health problems. His key message to everyone is:
act earlier.
Many non-professional carers have found it difficult to cope and to care for their loved ones during this time, particularly for illnesses like Parkinson's. Our health correspondent Bethany Noon has more.
This is Anne Williams. She is a 77-year-old and a full-time non-professional carer to her husband John, who has Parkinson's.
How long have you been a carer? Well, actually, nearly all his married life, but since he started with Parkinson's, obviously, I've had to do a little bit more. He's not very domesticated, my husband, which stands me in good stead because I can do most things, fortunately.
Have you found it relatively hard to care for John with lockdown and this second lockdown as well?
Not so much hard. It's been frustrating because there's things that we need to get done and people to see, and it's just not materialising. But like I said,
the UK Department of Health and Social Care defines non-professional carers as people who look after family, friends, neighbours because of their long-term physical or mental health or care needs related to old age.
Not so much on me, but the pressure it puts on other people where I need looking after. I've never needed looking after. I find it difficult when the people that are looking after me are absolutely brilliant. But I'd rather I didn't need them.
The Family Resources Survey estimated that in 2018 to 2019, 7% of people were provided unpaid care. That is around 4.7 million people of the UK population. Have you received any support, mental, physical support to help you cope to care for him?
Only of the daughter and the grandchildren. No support whatsoever from any of the official places. But having said that, at this moment I am coping, and John is all right, and I don't think that he's an emergency case. Should it be an emergency case, then I'd have to try and get it from the doctor. If for some reason I couldn't do it, or my daughter couldn't do it, you know, we would have to work around that.
Carers UK has provided help, tips and guidance on their website to protect unpaid non-professional carers like Anne's mental well-being, as well as care receivers like John during the COVID-19 pandemic. Bethany Noon, Keys News.
The government has come under fire for its refusal to extend the validity of driving theory test certificates, with some learner drivers being forced to fork out extra funds to resit theory tests they've already passed. Megan Matthews reports.
Learning to drive is renowned for being a complicated skill as well as a rite of passage. But the current generation of learner drivers are facing more roadblocks than most. This is Ruby, one of the many learner drivers learning to drive during the pandemic. Due to lockdowns and ever-changing government restrictions, the last year of her education has been documented by test cancellations and postponements. While she only recently took her theory test, others are at risk of having to retake theory exams if their wait for practical tests overruns the 2-year theory test grace period. But some have questioned if this is more about making money than road safety.
The reason they want you to retake your theory is because they want your highway code knowledge to be up to date, which I can fully understand, completely get that, rules are changing all the time. But when you pass your test, you don't have to retake your theory. So what's the difference? Because you can already drive, you're just waiting to take your test. So I don't really see the logic behind it. I think as a learner driver, it feels like they just want to make money out of you, because it is the government's fault that they keep putting us into lockdown. They should at least give your retake, pay it for you, give it you for free. If you fail, fair enough, you pay for your next one.
However, not everybody agrees with these suggestions.
I must admit, there's been a few petitions around to sign to say that it's unfair to make them take it again, but I've not signed it because I think they should take them again. As harsh as that seems, you know, it's for a reason. It's because there's a lot of elements that you need to know that you learn on the theory side of it. You know, rules, regulations, road signs.
Shadow Transport Secretary Jim McMahon has called on the government to extend theory test certificates by a year. This follows analysis which revealed that more than 300,000 practical tests were cancelled in the first half of 2020 alone. 140,000 practical tests are usually taken each month. Since the pandemic, this figure has dropped to just 2,000. Across April, May and June of 2020, only 6,000 learner drivers took their test. This is 50 times fewer than the 400,000 who took their test in the same period of 2019. Other political parties are also endorsing Labour's suggestions.
I know that there's legislation in place and it's difficult, but as you say, because COVID is such a sort of one-off remarkable thing where everything's having to really grind to a halt across the country, a lot of things have been changed, a lot of legislation has been put in because of it. So I think it would be a good gesture by the government if they could either agree to extend the period for a year, or at the very least, say, for somebody who's already passed the test, to waive it if they're insisting on them waive the charge if they're insisting on them taking it again.
Regardless of the government's decision concerning theory tests, one thing is for sure: the pandemic has created a disillusioned and disenchanted next generation of drivers.
With face-to-face teaching having come to a halt over the past year, there are rising concerns about whether the fees students are paying are justifiable for an online university experience. Neve Folks reports.
With online university the new normal and face-to-face teaching a memory of the past, it raises the question, are the fees justifiable for the service provided?
Libraries like this have been replaced with student bedrooms, but how are students finding it?
I myself not really as engaged in the lectures as I once was. I find that I'm distracted by my phone or by other people in the house.
Many unis have invested in online platforms and took on a blended approach.
Part of that was the university upgraded the Blackboard system and we moved to Blackboard Ultra. But the academic colleagues said it gave a much richer environment and that was much more interactive for students. So that was a big investment that we did really, really quickly.
Blackboard is now the new classroom.
It's 8:30 now. I'm just getting ready for my 9 o'clock lecture and getting my notes together. Currently in my first lecture, making some notes. Big lunch, now on to lecture number 2. 2 lectures done for the day.
There has been criticisms over the lack of support and help from the government.
It's generally agreed upon most unions that the government should be bailing out the higher education sector the same as it has with other sectors in a way to help give students a partial refund of their tuition, and it has to come from the government because the university can't afford to do that.
I don't really think the £9,000 fees are justifiable because it's all online, we never get to see our teachers.
The uncontrollable lack of face-to-face teaching is still a concern.
There's still something that's really important about that face-to-face contact.
So we asked our viewers on Twitter what they have done during lockdown and what new hobbies they have started during these difficult times. And one of you has been catching up on all the books you've been planning to read, as we can see.
One of you has been taking up cycling during this lockdown.
And so, has it inspired you to take up any hobbies during this lockdown, Ollie?
Not necessarily hobbies, but I built a computer last year.
Right.
I'm not much of a gamer, so it didn't need to be massively powerful, but it was still, to me, it was on this epic scale. It was full of rainbow lighting, and it took a lot of hard, infuriating, excruciating work, but I got there in the end.
See, I wish I had the mindset to do that. I don't think I'm technical enough to be able to set up a full computer. I wish I had the mind frame where I would know, oh, this button does that, this button does that, whereas when my computer breaks, I'm literally stuck. I don't know what I'm doing.
I have neither of those things, and yet I forced myself to.
You still managed to do it.
And fingers crossed I did it right, because all my uni work's on there, so
well,
remains to be seen.
We'll all hope and pray that it works out for you.
But that's all that we have time for today. You can follow us on Twitter at Keys News and on Instagram at Keys TV. But for now, back to the studio.
Thank you for watching. Goodbye.
We now have Catherine Monk joining us from Salford University. So, Catherine, what is the progress regarding students' demand for the possible partial refund of tuition fees because of the lack of face-to-face teaching?
Well, right now, despite there's nothing going on in the government, there has been a petition that has been signed by over 1 million people to talk about in the next Parliament debates to put down the fees from £9,000 per term to £3,000. So it's cheaper for the people, but there's still nothing in conclusion. There's still protests happening, that students are speaking up, and they still want to be heard by the government, but nothing has been decided yet.
So now that the UK has a path to freedom, as your Prime Minister puts it, what does the next academic term look like?
Well, right now, despite that there is more freedom here in the UK, the issue is that most students are still not going to university. We're still going into Blackboard and Skype and things like that to have our lessons. There are a few degrees that can go into the university, which are more practical, for example, journalism or medicine, but most of us are still not doing face-to-face lectures. And there's still an outcry to have our fees lowered down, and students are still angry about it, but for the meantime is to keep everybody safe.
Thank you so much for speaking to us, Catherine.
Thank you.
Next, we go to the University of Johannesburg in South Africa for these reports for the students there.
I'm Nomfundo Manzini.
And we are here on the lawns of our campus on a sunny autumn day.
For the University of Johannesburg Global News Relay 2021, we have prepared a series of short films.
Stories with a creative and sometimes a hybrid approach to documentary filmmaking.
And all these films have a common thread. Great characters who have survived and thrived despite the impact of the pandemic on their lives.
First up, the business of dying. This is a heartbreaking journey of a businessman, Jabu Pasha, who struggles with making a living in these times.
Next, we meet talented poet and actress, Refilwe Petese, who refuses to give up on her ambitious plans in Ignite the Fire.
Then, right here on our campus, a psychology student, Simpiwe Ndazi, is under pressure when she decides to help struggling learners in their final year of high school, called Matric here in South Africa.
And finally, in Here's to the Artist, Vuyelwa Matsane, passionate fashion designer, closes the door to her business only to find an opening to a new hidden talent.
No, life has not always been like this. It has not always been good. Jabu is my name. My name is Pasha. I was born here in Gauteng, but moved to Limpopo. My school life, from the first grade up until the last one, I've been carrying a bag, selling snacks. So here I am, I see a loophole. If I can sell cigarettes, including the teachers as well, then I can survive. I run this business, Moro Pasha Communications and Media. So with the communications and media business, I mean, you can do advertising, you can do photography production, you can do, venture into different types of, the broadcast level, you can even be there. So choosing an internet cafe over photography wasn't really like, maybe now I'm actually like shutting down my photography stuff and I don't like it anymore. And no, this is something that it's one family. I don't want to talk about this. This is killing me every day. They went to my internet cafe. They broke into my internet cafe, took my computers. The following year they came. Okay, I was at the school attending a meeting for my child. Hardly 26 minutes going outside. My cameras, the laptop, hard drives, everything that I was about to do a presentation to the municipality at Ekurhuleni. Everything, all that, just went like this. Then the following day, they took my car. That was the end of me in the life of photography.
And some disturbing figures out of National Treasury today. It says South Africa's unemployment rate could reach 40% due to the impact of COVID-19. Some businesses, as you well know, have shut down. Others have indicated they might not be opening after the lockdown.
They usually say a knockdown is not a knockout. So with what happened to SAA, although it affects me, but then at the same time, it's another chapter of my life.
Is a return to talk about retrenchments at South African Airways. Where do we stand tonight?
South African Airways business rescue practitioners have officially embarked on a retrenchment process.
So I've just started the toilet business, which I'm hoping the best will come out of it. But now I'm pushing it hard so that I can make a living, a revenue out of this business. Today we've got 3 funerals that we're taking care of. We're going to deliver about 3 toilets to all those funerals. So apart from the funerals, even tomorrow we've got another job in Braamfontein. So whereby there is that small event in Ghana whereby they will be having students doing some shaky moves. So we're going to take some there as well. But just for today, it's just those funerals.
How's life going?
Life is going great. All the pieces I'm picking up, they seem to be taking me in the right direction.
A breathing piece of flesh with a color that fits into the colors of nature. Dark as the soil and colorless like the rays of the sun. A simple black child, a symbol of perfection. Refugio Pisese is a daughter of Alexander Township. I rather should say a granddaughter. I was born and raised in the township. I am a sister. I was raised in a very not very privileged background, raised by my grandfather. I have an organization. I started in 2019 rather, and the name of the organization is Ignite the Fire. So it's under the sectors of heritage, sports, arts, and culture. Hearing about the virus, the COVID, is scary because I was supposed to go to Italy, and fortunately that we were stopped by the government saying that no activities will take place in Milan because the virus has, spread so much. So everything's on a stop. A letter was sent by the theatre saying that it's a list of the shows and some of the 3 programs that I'm involved in at the theatre. Then the main program being Butilo. So the letter says the theatre will be shut. You know how broken I am. So we then decided that we're going to change the whole physical, outreach to the people, and rather make it sort of like an online as also a way of teaching people about the digital, this new industry, this new digital industry that is now introduced as a way of living, a new way of living for the people. So we then targeted mostly Facebook, that we know people will be sitting on there. A lot of people, even myself, I was sitting at home and I was online. And most people were sitting online, and we knew, let's go for online, let's do podcasts, because we felt that it's applied arts methods. We cannot say we don't have content. There is content every day, and right at our homes where we were, we, created ideas that felt that they'd be able to reach the community in a way that the community has never ever thought they would. The easing of the lockdown meant we went back. It meant we're going back to do Butsilo. It meant we're going back on the drawing board, running a new whole festival. It's no longer Butsilo. I am the resemblance of nature. You are the resemblance of nature. We are the resemblance of nature. You are the resemblance of nature. Come on. You cannot hate me. You can only love me because you love nature and nature is my resemblance. Go on now, black child. Live on and shine. If young people anywhere in townships want to really not be a part, but they want to ignite the fire, of course, they must just go on ahead and register their own Ignite the Fire and come work with us so that we can all ignite the fire. Because if we can be a unity, if all provinces, townships, eventually we all start igniting the fire. Imagine, I'm not saying there's going to be many refillers, but I'm just saying there's going to be many of us, doing this greatness. And too many greatness is going to be eventually this transformation. And we are going to really transform this country. Igqirha lendlela kuqongqothwane igqirha lendlela kuthiwa kuqongqothwane igqirha lendlela kuthiwa kuqongqothwane.
Anxious, uncertain.
It is the 27th of March 2020. It is official. South Africa is under lockdown.
My name is Simphiwe Ndlazi. I am 20 years old. I'm from Katlehong specifically. I went to the University of Johannesburg. I am studying BA in psychology.
A nationwide lockdown for 21 days.
When I saw the announcement regarding the lockdown, I was really scared. I was concerned about my studies. Leaving RIS was a huge disappointment for me because I had just arrived at RIS. Having to go back home really affected how conducive, the environment would be for me to effectively study. Senzo created a WhatsApp group chat in which everyone who had interest and was willing to help would then contact him, and what he'd do is that he would add everyone in the WhatsApp group chat. The reason why I didn't tell my mom about joining the group is because I don't really have so many chats about my everyday doings regarding my studies, and I didn't think this is one thing that was important or really hectic to tell her about. I was willing to be involved in it. She was very concerned.
If you're going to do this, how are you going to cope nomsebenzi wakho wesikolo na? Sizokhona ukuthi abe busy nabantwana besikolo ngapha while she has to do her school work ngapha bengabe izinto ngaziphathi phela.
When learners weren't responsive to my efforts of trying to help them when I was sending them videos of my tutorials, I was really disappointed and hurt, mostly because I was also sacrificing my own time for them, and I felt as if that time is not being appreciated. I had my own things to focus on, so there was a point where I'm questioning whether or not is it worth it to even continue with this. So I definitely was on the edge of just dropping everything. It was very difficult managing both duties at the same time, tutoring the learners as well as adequately focusing on my work. Sometimes it would get very overwhelming and pressurizing a lot. I had to study before I tutor the learners, right, which came with a lot of work, and I also had to study my own work. So it came a point where the work is too much. As a result, there was a point where I actually didn't do well at the time in a particular test under my course, and that really came with a lot of disappointment. When teachers started being part of the group, I think it became a little bit better with them engaging with us, being responsive and trusting that what we're doing for them is something that we're just doing out of the goodness of our hearts. Eventually, when they then uplifted the lockdown regulations, now learners could go back to school. That meant now we didn't have so much pressure tutoring them as much as we were when they weren't going to school at all.
I go by the name Tandeko Kwala. I completed my matric in Katlehong in Sijabulile Secondary School. This year I'm doing my first year in the University of Johannesburg, studying towards my degree in psychology. I really appreciate their help and the program. It really helped me so much since I didn't have access to previous question papers. So I really appreciate that.
Having realized the impact that the project had for learners, what we have decided to do is now open a tutoring institution which will be based in Katlehong, wherein we will be now helping the learners. We are going to be implementing other strategies to make sure that we are reaching as much numbers as possible. So we're definitely going to put ourselves out there using different social media platforms besides WhatsApp. The end of the program actually helped me with a lot. Because I had so much time, I was able to really study adequately, and eventually I really passed very well, and I was very impressed with my marks, and I couldn't be happier.
To the artists, here's to the freaks, the ones who articulate what the soul seeks. The musicians, the poets, the singers, designers, the fresh-faced new talent, the grizzled old-timers. Writers, exciters, performers and actors, the fine freak flag flyers, the real-life distractors.
My name is Vuyelwa Matsane. I am from Mpumalanga, a small township called Simile. I am a fashion designer and an illustrator. My aunt bought me this stack of like Disney books, all of the Disney princesses. It was like Snow White, Cinderella, everybody, right? And I don't know, I gravitated towards The Little Mermaid. I love Ariel. I love fairy tales and fantasy characters. So I would trace her a lot. My dad is actually an educator. So I think how he supported me was he gave me a lot of stationery, but there wasn't really an encouragement necessarily. It was just something that I did as a hobby, and no one really stopped me, but no one also encouraged me. It was like, oh, you can draw, you know? It wasn't necessarily pressured. It was the decision that made sense at the time. Yeah, but I did say to my dad, I want to study art, and he was like, you can do that like after, like finish the law, and then you can do art. So I was like, okay. I didn't fight, you know. It wasn't really a heavy conversation. I was just like, okay, well, that makes sense. The scariest thing for me was, okay, where am I going? But I think I definitely had a lot more passion and a lot more zeal, you know, for fashion and art and all of that stuff. So I was really more excited, and I was just more interested in the future and what it could be. But I also just wasn't thinking too far ahead, but I was just really, really more excited. Like, okay, I want to be an artist. I want to be a fashion designer. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to start my own business. I just didn't know what part of fashion I wanted to be in. 2020 was supposed to be the year where it's like, okay, we're getting into a new studio. We're hiring more people, because things were really, really looking up. And then March came, and the president was like, sorry, y'all, it's not what you thought. So I called my mom and I was like, look, I think I might be coming home, but I need to close off some contracts this side, and then I'll come back. And my mom was like, okay, that's fine, that's wisdom. And then I got a DM on my Instagram for the illustrations. And I don't really check DM. The lady says, oh, my husband is graduating, but unfortunately he's not going to have a ceremony because of COVID, Could you please do an illustration of him graduating just to celebrate so that he has something, you know. A week after I had done the thing, and now I'm illustrating a lot of people, I get a call from someone from the Sowetan newspaper. They're like, we'd like to do a story on you. So I was like, okay, sure, that's awesome. And then it slowed down. Then there was nothing. And I was like, oh snap, I think I might need to revisit that go home plan. But now it's like 3 months later. So now I have to book another 3 months. So it was just like this constant, like every time I'm about to leave, something happens. So it was just like weird. Emotionally, I really struggled with like anxiety, depression, just a lot of negative stuff, because I also come from a highly critical family. So like nothing is, I don't know if you can tell, but I'm like a huge perfectionist. That's because like, okay, nothing is ever really good enough. I really struggled. It took a really long time for me to trust myself and be able to like bring people into the space and allow them, like, you know, because people will give you their money and they're trusting you, but if you don't trust yourself, you're always going to disappoint people, right? So that was a really difficult thing, to just like believe in me, right, and be proud of me and trust me, right, that I'm actually capable. The fact that my business is still up and running is, I've got clients who love me, who became friends to me, who took care of me, who paid me more than I had charged, just to, like, it was just amazing for me, right? Just the opportunities that came through. I got to illustrate a book. That was like, it was just so amazing stuff happened. Yeah, so what it taught me is that, you know, your gift will make way for you. Yeah, there's nothing is wasted. Like, you just need to be prepared for the opportunities that are gonna come.
What an amazing and a great experience for all of us, and it has been a roller coaster ride too, but I'm looking forward to the broadcasting day. How's it been like for you, Nofundo?
It has absolutely been amazing. I enjoyed it so much. I have never been part of a production like this before, so I absolutely had an amazing time.
And that is all from us at the University of Johannesburg.
And from the team. Bye!
We now join Shlenshla Matwatwa and Nomfundo Munzini at the University of Johannesburg. You often hear about South African variant, and just earlier this week, Reuters reported that the Pfizer vaccine may not be that effective against the variant. What can you tell us?
Hi, David. It seems as if that might be the case, but I will allow Nhlanhla to expand more on that.
Yes, David. The variant 541.VO2 is that dangerous. It's 50% more dangerous than the virus that we had in 2020.
I see. So how are the social distancing rules enforced in Johannesburg?
So Nina, you don't want to know about that. So what happened in 2020, I was arrested because I was outside. I just needed to get some air. So I was outside and then I got arrested, and then I attended the case for like 6 months, and then luckily the case got withdrawn. So it was that tough.
Yeah, so it's very, very serious. The country is very serious about social distancing. And with me, my mother is a security officer, so she was working throughout the whole of lockdown. I'm not sure how she was practicing social distancing at work. So whenever she came back home, I would just prepare natural remedies like your garlic, your lemon, just so that we could all be safe in the house.
I see. So you were arrested, so that's quite a strict restrictions that you have going on in there. So does that make people in Johannesburg feel safer?
Not really. It's something that we have to do. You know that now you are aware that you're going to be arrested if you don't obey the rules. So we just have to. We have to do that, because if not, you're just going to be arrested. So it's that hard.
I see. So thank you so much for speaking to us.
Thank you, Nshasha.
Yo.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Goodbye. We now cross over to the United States and join Texas State University in San Marcos for the report on how COVID changed life there.
Greetings and welcome to Texas State University in San Marcos, Texas. My name is Jaden Edison, the editor-in-chief of the University Star, the student newspaper here at Texas State. Classes here are still mostly remote, masks and social distancing are still required, and our TV studio is still closed, which is why we're coming to you from the offices of the Star. But there is hope that the fall will feel more normal. And one reason for that optimism is the COVID-19 vaccine. About 22 million Texans 16 and older are now eligible to receive the vaccine. Here at Texas State, the university is now offering mass vaccinations. Our own Morgan McKenzie has the latest.
Early Friday morning, people showed up at the Student Center one by one, eager for their first dose.
I honestly didn't think it would be this soon. So I'm really grateful to the university for making this happen, and I was trying very hard not to rush it because I was on lists in Austin and other places just trying to cover my bases. So this just read in my email yesterday, got here today. It went so smoothly. They have everything very well organized.
With 300 doses from Johnson & Johnson and 500 Pfizer vaccinations, the Texas State Department of Health Services sent registration emails to priority groups 1A and 1B.
I chose the Pfizer, and the reason I chose that is even though it's two vaccines and it takes a bit longer, all the research I did, the other vaccine available is just, it's good, but it's just like statistically a little less protective.
Those with a higher risk of COVID exposure, like faculty and staff, along with those with age-related illnesses, were among the first groups.
My hope is that after spring break, we're going to start to see weekly vaccination events on our campus, and that will continue through the rest of the semester.
Fortunately, this first round of vaccinations is only the beginning.
Maybe sometime in May, we might be able to start vaccinating our student population as well. I certainly would love to be able to vaccinate all of our students before they go home for the summer.
With more vaccinations on the way, remaining staff, students, and surrounding Hayes County residents can feel hopeful, knowing that their first dose is just around the corner.
Texans are no longer mandated to wear masks following an executive order from the state's governor, Greg Abbott. The governor's order also lifted capacity restrictions for businesses, but those establishments have the choice to either keep safety protocols in place or open fully. Abbott's order removes state enforcement of those mandates, but masks are still required in certain places, like public transportation and federal buildings, as those fall under a federal executive order signed by President Joe Biden in January. The Texas Education Agency says local school boards will decide whether they will continue with the mask policy. Texas State is among the schools that have opted to keep the mask mandate in place. As Christella Jones tells us, several businesses in San Marcos are still cautious when it comes to fully opening and keeping mask requirements in place.
The governor's controversial decision not to require the wearing of masks has left many local downtown restaurants and bars to decide for themselves how to handle the issue. Most restaurants still require their employees to wear masks, but allow customers to choose whether or not they want to wear them inside.
We will be putting signs out. We just took down all the signs that were given to us by the government, Judge Becerra. We took those down because although the governor said that mandate's no longer in place, we decided to not do it, but we will be putting signs to encourage customers to keep wearing their face masks and social distance.
Sean Patrick's will continue to sanitize tables and chairs to ensure the safety of its customers. Other restaurants, like the Blue Dahlia on the square, say they will continue to enforce mask wearing and social distancing protocols when customers enter the building or walk around the restaurant. However, the masks may be removed when they are seated for meals.
We followed the mandate pretty much to a T and continue to follow even though it's been lifted. I would say the only thing is because of the signage, we can actually point, so we get a little bit less strife from people when they don't want to wear it.
Despite their signage, Vaughn says she has experienced resistance from a few customers and has had to ask them to leave if they did not comply.
We've had a couple of people, it's usually in the older generations I've noticed, that have kind of been a little bit off about it. I feel like we've had, in the whole time of this year, 3 people that we've had to ask not to come back unless they wear a mask. But as long as they wear one, we're like, you're welcome to come back anytime, just please wear a mask.
Another local restaurant, Gumby's Pizza on Hopkins, says they will also continue to encourage customers to wear their masks inside the restaurant, but guests can order outside if they do not want to wear masks.
So we're going to continue to do the cleaning and sanitation that we had when we started COVID. We're going to continue to require masks in store for employees, and we've got all the barriers and that kind of stuff set up. But we are going to continue to still ask for customers to wear masks while they're in the store. If they want to sit out here on the patio, they're welcome to take them off when they're outside. But inside the store, we're going to still require them.
Higdon says the governor's decision caught him and his employees by surprise, especially since most of his employees and many Texans have not yet been vaccinated.
I would have preferred they kept it, but we're doing what we can. So, and our main priority here is to do everything we can to make sure you still have a great experience at Gumby's, but also that we're doing everything we can to protect our employees.
Central Texas is a hub for live music. Austin is known as the live music capital of the world, and San Marcos has its own vibrant music scene. Among those who have been most impacted by the shutdown are musicians with clubs and bars either closed or at limited capacity over the last year. While there is hope that live music will return on a larger scale this summer, those artists are still having to get creative. John Daves has the story.
With bars and music venues closed in response to the coronavirus pandemic, Central Texas musicians are finding new ways to make ends meet. While some musicians have shifted their focus to writing and recording, others have come up with new ways to play live music. Guitarist of local band Blue Water Highway, Greg Essington, says that virtual live-streamed concerts have provided the band an opportunity to connect with fans safely.
We do like these weekly live streams on a place called stageit.com, and we did that probably from about middle March to middle of August.
Because of online platforms such as StageIt, bands have been able to stream live concerts and receive donations from fans. While not entirely comparable to a live in-person event, virtual concerts provide musicians with a way to interact with and play for hundreds of loyal fans, all from the safety of their own homes. Blue Water Highway lead singer Zach Kibido says the pandemic presents a challenge, but creative solutions offer relief.
We did a show at a drive-in in Austin that cars pulled up and we played live on the stage.
With vaccinations on the horizon, local musicians remain hopeful that their traditional means of work will soon return.
Texas State is looking to the fall and a return that closely resembles normal. The university is planning an in-person dominant educational experience, which is a move away from the online and hybrid course formats that have taken hold since last spring. Decisions on moving individual classes to an online or hybrid format will be made at the department level in consultation with faculty. Registration for fall classes opened on March 29th. As the transition back to a fuller face-to-face experience begins, students have adapted to online learning. Jason Hong has more.
Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, many students have adapted to an online environment. Some approach the task in unique ways. Texas State student Gina Loyola says using a calendar and having a clean workspace have helped her stay organized this semester.
So this year, the way that I've been staying organized is with a calendar. I've been putting all of my due dates on there and setting a bunch of goals. I've also been keeping a very clean space since clutter does tend to make me not organized.
While this works for Loyola, other students have different methods to stay organized.
Like a routine where every single day I just go into this habit where I read my notes, I read what I did in class that day, and I read my homework, and I do that homework. And that way, having a routine, it sets it up so you just automatically do it every single day. You don't have to even think or worry about not getting it done.
1 month from now, Texas State will hold spring commencement exercises and will do so with fully in-person ceremonies. This is a change from the fall when the university offered both in-person and virtual ceremonies, and from last spring when ceremonies were held entirely online. While the move to in-person ceremonies is a step toward life after COVID, students will be limited in the number of guests they can bring to accommodate social distancing.
Graduation would be very challenging, trying to pick amongst all of the many family and friends that I have who can attend my graduation.
The ceremonies will be held across 3 days, May 12th, 13th, and 14th, outdoors at Bobcat Stadium. In the past, ceremonies were held inside the university's arena, Strahan Coliseum. Over the last year, with so many typical activities canceled or interrupted, people have connected or reconnected with passions old and new, as Brooke Rizicki shows.
Starting new hobbies has been extremely important for many students to stay positive this past year. Having these activities to keep busy has helped their mental health through difficult times. Many students are taking online classes and some are unemployed. As a result, they are forced to sit in their apartments or dorms alone all day. Texas State student Michaela Armstrong says going to the park to skateboard has been a great way to ease her mind and get out of her small apartment.
So I learned, and then I was just borrowing friends' boards, doing it a little bit at a time, and then eventually I got my own board and I just started skating. It really helped me during quarantine when I was alone to have something to do and be active when the gyms were closed.
Some students have been creative with crafts like crocheting and lino printing.
So I needed something that was more lax, and there's something really satisfying about just carving into a stamp and then printing it and being able to just not have to do something that I felt like I needed to do and just doing something that I wanted to do.
During these uncertain times, finding ways to be creative and stay active are important for remaining positive and learning something new.
Thank you so much for joining us for our look at life here in Central Texas 1 year after COVID. We hope you stay well, safe, and stay informed, and we cannot wait to join you again next year and do so at a time when we are truly and fully past COVID. For Texas State University, I'm Jaden Edison.
So we now have Jaden Edison joining us from Texas State. So Jaden, since you guys did that report, do you now know whether students can get the vaccine before the end of the semester?
Absolutely. So a couple of services in the state of Texas actually opened up vaccine eligibility to adults who are 16 or older, which majority of college campus is in range. So the university, who is an approved vaccine distributor, has now opened up vaccine eligibility to all faculty, staff, and students who are 16 or older. So over the last several days, well, at least Texas State is holding these specific vaccination events. Right now it's about once a week or so, but they have this mass vaccination event coming up where students across the spectrum here at Texas State have been getting vaccinated. So I have friends who I see every day who have recently been able to get the vaccine due to the extended eligibility when it comes to receiving it. So Texas State's goal before the next semester starts, the fall semester starts in August, is to get all of its students vaccinated, right? The university is planning an in-person return to classes as it approaches the fall, as it approaches August. So its message has been really clear across the board, is that the university, Texas State, wants to get students vaccinated, and they also have the opportunity to do so through signing up through the vaccine registration that the university has made available over the last several weeks. So it's been very fascinating to see. We're still not past COVID, obviously, but these times, you start to see a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, though we still have a long way to go in our state, in our country specifically. But Texas State, is in a place where more and more students are beginning to get vaccinated, and the expectation is that more and more students will get vaccinated as the university approaches the fall semester.
Now that we know that there's no longer a mask mandate in Texas, do you find that most people aren't wearing them anymore? How do people avoid catching the virus then?
Right. It's a very interesting situation, to say the very least. I think every community is a little bit different. I would say that specifically I can speak for Texas State, is that Texas State still has a mask mandate in place. So the guidance still allows wiggle room for universities and places of higher education and also school districts, whether it's high school, elementary schools, and whatnot, they have more leeway when it comes to what they want to do with masks. So I know here on our campus, right, most students you're going to see walking the campus are wearing masks just because it is mandated specifically on our campus. But when you go out, it's interesting. I covered an event this past weekend where the majority of people who were at the event had no masks on. So it kind of is a thing where every place is a little bit different. You go to grocery stores. I know the big HEB grocery store that we have, here across the board, they are still requiring masks. So there are a lot of places, restaurants and whatnot, who still have their respective mask policies. But as you're out walking the streets and whatnot, you do see that more and more people are not wearing masks as well. So I would say it really just depends on where you're going and what you're doing, but it's all over the place with it. And as far as remaining safe, I think that's the $1 million question. I think there's a true concern, still on behalf of a lot of people who don't feel safe going out, right? So I think it's tough, but the best thing that we all can do, which I think public health officials across the globe have made clear, is that vaccination is the key to getting us through this pandemic. So I think the more and more people who can get vaccinated, right? I think the hope is that that will be the thing that pushes us through these tough times. So Texas State has this major vaccine distribution effort. The counties surrounding us and the states and across the board have these mass vaccine distribution efforts. So time will tell what happens, but as far as remaining safe, I think most people are relying on washing hands, staying bathed, all those different things that public health officials have made clear will help mitigate and help spread of this virus. So very interesting situation here in Texas. You have some people who really are pushing for people to continue to follow COVID-19 guidelines when it comes to mask wearing, so on and so forth. And you have other people who have sort of in the governor's orders to get rid of the mask mandate. So it really depends on the place you're going, but I think most people, who do still, believe in public health and believe in public safety when it comes to this virus, I would say that those people are still wearing masks and still making efforts to get vaccinated.
I see. So thank you, Jaden, for joining us.
Thank you, Jaden.
Thank you.
So let's go now to another part in Texas, in Lubbock, from where students at Texas Tech University filed these stories.
In this year's edition of the Global News Relay, How COVID Changed Us, coming up we take a look at the ways the pandemic has affected our community, including how many people are still finding ways to cope in a world much different than it was a year ago.
Businesses around the United States first struggled and then found a way to survive in a world without in-person interaction. But some places were hit harder than others. Find out how some local eateries adapted while others disappeared.
And there's few things that have changed more in our day-to-day lives than how we communicate with each other. But will those changes in interaction help us or harm us as we slowly return to normalcy? Students and an expert weigh in with their thoughts on the present and the future of communication in our new world. Welcome to the 2021 Global News Relay edition of MCTV. I'm Nick Tauschek.
And I'm Kritzia Williams.
We're coming to you from the College of Media and Communication at Texas Tech University in Lubbock, Texas, here in the United States. Lubbock is one of the cities hardest hit by the COVID-19 pandemic here in the U.S. Lubbock County has recorded nearly 50,000 cases of the coronavirus since the first infections in the city were announced last March. Lubbock ranks among the top 10 cities in America for most cases of COVID-19 per capita, and the city has also reported more than 700 deaths, which is a lot for a population of only 300,000 people. But since the beginning of the year, we've seen a positive change here in the city, as the number of new cases per day has dropped by more than 90% since January 1st. The number of deaths has also decreased, and our hospitals have returned to near normal capacities after running out of beds multiple times in the winter. And the biggest reason for that change has been the introduction of the COVID-19 vaccine. Lubbock residents first began having access to the vaccine in January, and since then, close to 25% of the population has been fully vaccinated. That puts Lubbock ahead of the national vaccination rate, with just over 20% of Americans being reported as fully vaccinated.
Even though the pandemic situation has improved dramatically here in West Texas, COVID-19 is still having an effect on Lubbock residents. The virus has taken a toll on many people in many different ways. College students' mental health in particular has become a major talking point in light of the pandemic. Resources like the Texas Tech Student Wellness Center have been doing all they can to help. Dr. Richard Lennox is the director of the Texas Tech Student Counseling Center. He said he and his staff have seen a shift in student mental health due to the changes in student social interaction and the unknown of the COVID-19 pandemic.
The main issue that we have noticed, and I'm hearing from my staff, is the social isolation that is having an impact on the students, and it's happening in a couple of different ways. Students that might have had some previous mental health issues, it seems like the isolation, the social isolation, not being able to be around their friends as much. For those students, it has been exacerbating their symptoms. A lot of students that come into the counseling center are dealing with anxiety or depression. Those are the two main issues that bring students into the counseling center. And then we also see some students coming in that maybe did not have any previous history of mental health issues. The uncertainty is another big issue that is causing issues for people. Just not knowing what is going to be happening in the future. When are things going to return to normal? For some people, that has increased anxiety.
Daphne De La Fuente, the student assistant and peer educator president at the Risk Intervention and Safety Education Office, said she has noticed how college students' mental health has become more noticeable and encourages students to speak up when they are in need.
I think being honest about what you're feeling at all times. I think we have a really big tendency, even if it isn't like super major, any sort of like feeling that you maybe aren't really like sitting well with or are uncomfortable with, like it's okay to say that you're not feeling good. You shouldn't really like, lie to any of your friends or your family or people close to you and saying like, oh, I'm okay, like I've got this. It's always important to be honest about your feelings to the people who can help you, because that's the one way that help is going to get to you, and the resources get to you is by speaking up about where you're at and how you're feeling.
Alongside De La Fuente, Lennox said he urges students to seek the help that they need and do what they can to keep their stress as low as possible.
This is true for all mental health issues. It's really about keeping stress down low enough so it doesn't back up into becoming a mental health issue. So keeping stress low, making sure you're practicing your self-care strategies every day. We always think, I'll take care of my self-care later. I'll do it tomorrow when I have time. And that is not a great strategy for self-care. It really is better to carve out time on a daily basis, even if you don't feel overwhelmed. And if you can keep your stress low enough by engaging in some of those proactive self-care strategies, then you never have to get overwhelmed during your busy week.
Mental health is a concern, especially when it comes to students and the busy lives they live. With the world ever changing due to the pandemic, times can be hard. If you ever feel like you need help or you're feeling down mentally or emotionally, Dr. Lennox recommends finding a resource like the Counseling Center for assistance.
One source of stress that has affected students and many people around the world has been changes in how people interact and learn new skills. During COVID-19, learning has changed tremendously, with many forms of instruction transitioning to virtual options. With those changes, many college students are concerned about getting the right education they need to succeed in their careers. Toni Krebs, Assistant Director of Employer Relations at Texas Tech, says she interacts with students who feel like they aren't getting the same quality of education as in years past.
Seems a little like artificial intelligence to some people. Okay, so you're not there, you're not able to facial expressions can be a little bit lost in there. Congruence between a facial expression and what is said. So body language and what is said can be, the timing can be off because there's sometimes a delay. So I think maybe that might be part of why they feel it's almost like a false created type of atmosphere.
Even with the differences in communication, Krebs says it's still possible for students to get a good education that can help them in their future careers.
Throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, many businesses have been hit hard by lockdowns and restrictions that keep people from being able to spend money in person. But as cities around the United States began to open up, owners began to discover new options to offer goods and services to their local communities. And here in Texas, with businesses now being able to open to pre-COVID capacity, MCTV's Anakin Rios decided to stop by and see how one group of business owners found a way to survive.
It's no secret that everyone around the globe has had a dramatic change in life and work style thanks to COVID-19. And some of the ones who went through the most drastic changes are none other than local restaurants, especially here in Lubbock, like J&B's Coffee, Spanky's, and Flip's Tavern, to name a few.
Some changes these restaurants made to combat COVID-19 range from including new cleaning routines to reduce number of guests within the restaurant to even staff cutbacks as well.
We had changes every single week, from putting hand sanitizer absolutely everywhere in the store to buying antiviral spray to limiting capacity, and then everything got shut down. So our lobby was closed, everyone wore masks, and we operated curbside for a long time.
We had a crew of like 18 front of house people and about 12 in the back of house, and during that time it was we went down to maybe 5 or 6 front of house, and about the same for the back of house.
When it first started, we were one of the first places to start enforcing CDC guidelines, masking, social distancing. We dropped down to 50% like immediately, just to stay as safe as possible and keep our staff as safe as possible.
Even with all these substantial changes affecting restaurants, they always made it their goal to make sure customers were taken care of safely.
We just wanted to make sure our customers could be served in whichever way they could. So we've always, until recently, had completely limited capacity in the lobby. We did curbside for anyone that requested it, especially if you were elderly or immunocompromised.
But some restaurants found it harder to implement those changes than others.
We actually made it to the point to where we had to shut down, and we were, going to call it quits until all of this was over and we were going to be able to open properly because, nobody was allowed inside.
With the recent change in statewide guidelines, many local restaurants are asking customers to be understanding of the situation as they attempt to serve all guests.
Just be responsible and be respectful, especially of small businesses' rules that they're sticking with, whether it be masking or non-masking. Everybody's doing the best that they can in this time and doing what they think is best for them, their staff, their families, their businesses.
After all the changes COVID-19 gave us, no one knows for certain whenever we can return to a normal lifestyle. But one thing that is certain is that if we all stay safe, follow rules and regulations, we can make that normal lifestyle a possibility by working together around the globe. For MCTV News, I'm Anakin Rios.
Anakin joins us now in the studio. Anakin, as you visited these local restaurants around town, did you feel like things were starting to seem like normal?
Well, to answer your question, Kritzia, it did seem like things were seeming to go back to normal, with one exception being everyone wearing these around the restaurants.
Did the restaurants you went to see seem to still be following COVID-19 guidelines, even though masks are no longer required and there's no capacity limits?
Luckily, yes, all the restaurants I visited were following safety guidelines, and it seems like wearing a mask was more of a personal preference for people visiting the restaurant.
Thanks, Anakin.
The coronavirus pandemic has had wide-ranging effects on everything from healthcare to transportation and even to basics we take for granted, like sharing a smile with someone out in public. But there's little argument that the biggest change most people have experienced is how we communicate with our friends, co-workers, and even loved ones. So how will the alteration in communication affect each of us long-term? MCTV's Patricia Perry joins us now in studio with more on this story. Patricia?
Thanks, Nick. COVID-19 has changed how we communicate completely. With new forms of virtual communication for online learning and business meetings, we are either temporarily changed or forever changed. How has this new form of virtual communication affected students and professors here at Texas Tech University? How will this new skill of virtual communication be beneficial for us in the future? Virtual learning has changed how college students are learning completely. Freshman architecture major Connor Hathaway talks about the disadvantage of learning online.
It is definitely very different, and there is probably a lot more of me teaching myself. And that's probably on me too, because it's much harder to get motivated to go to class or to remember class or pay attention to class when it's on the screen, because you're not really there, you're still in your room, so it feels like a completely different place.
Online learning does give students the liberty to complete work and class when they can, but it does cut out some social aspects. Freshman Callie Harcrow gives her point of view about virtual learning.
I like it because I get my own space and time to do things, and I can do it as I go with work and other outside curriculum. But it's also hard because I don't have much interaction with face-to-face people.
This new aspect of virtual learning is benefiting students in a way they may not see yet. Associate Dean for Undergraduate Affairs Todd Chambers shares how this new form of communication can help students in the future.
I'm really excited about what the future holds. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities. We've already seen industries and organizations and specific companies that are already looking for experts and communication specialists who know how to run a virtual meeting, who know how to everybody now is looking for experts and expertise in all types of social media platforms.
Although virtual communication has been hard for everyone to adapt to, COVID-19 pushed us to develop these new skills that will be beneficial in years to come. Many are hoping to go back to a complete face-to-face format, but we may be changed forever. For MCTV, I'm Patricia Perry.
Patricia, in your interaction with students, did it seem like many of them thought that the changes in communication could actually be a good thing for their future careers?
Well, Nick, the students that I talked to felt like it would be beneficial to have this virtual communication skill, but they are worried if they're getting a good enough education to fulfill the requirements for their career in the future.
In your own personal experience, what's been the hardest part of virtual or hybrid classes?
Well, if I'm going to be honest, it's paying attention. I find it way easier to log on to Zoom and not really pay attention to the lecture or listen to an audio lecture and halfway listen. So I feel like it's a lot harder to get stuff done and do your assignments on time.
Thanks, Patricia.
So Nick, the theme of this year's Global News Relay broadcast is how COVID changed us. Let me ask you this question. How has COVID changed you?
Recently, I've seen that a lot of businesses have sent their employees home to work remotely. So it begs the question, what other opportunities for those of us graduating and going into the workforce are going to be open to us when we do emerge from all of our studies? I'm just very excited for all the opportunities for us. What about you?
For sure, I'm definitely excited to have that experience under my belt as I graduate this May, but Zoom fatigue is a thing, so definitely take care of that mental health if you can. That's what I've learned.
That's all for our portion of the Global News Relay.
Thanks so much for joining us, and we wish everyone around the world health and happiness as we slowly return to normal.
We now join Kritzia Williams and Patricia Perry at Texas Technology. Patricia, this mental health issue with students seems like a pretty common problem with college students all over the world. It's great to see the students in Texas Tech have all the access to outdoor space. I want to know, does the university have social distancing rules in classrooms, for example, and how are they enforced?
They actually do have social distancing classrooms. In a large lecture hall, they make you skip 2 seats to make sure everyone's distanced properly. They also have taken some classrooms outside to make it accommodable for larger classes, as well as some classes have smaller registration processes for students to sign up for.
I see. So Kritzia was also saying that she will be graduating this year. So in fact, now in a matter of weeks. So what are the job prospects like for college graduates in Texas right now?
So with the with the job process being so hard right now, I'm going into grad school instead of straight to the field right out of undergraduate. But a lot of my friends are actually looking for jobs, and they're in the market for a job, and they're just saying that it's very timid. and you need to be patient and persistent with communicating with whatever company.
So Kritzia was saying that she'll be graduating this year, in fact now in a matter of weeks. So what are the job prospects like for college graduates in Texas right now?
Yes, so the job market is very, very timid. You definitely have to be patient and persistent. I'm actually not getting a job right out of undergraduate. I'm going to graduate school, but a lot of my friends are saying you definitely have to be patient with the process and definitely keep nagging at them to let them know that you're here, you have what it takes to do that.
All right, thank you so much, Kritzia and Patricia, for speaking with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So many of the problems and challenges such as college education, mental health issues and getting vaccinated seem to be common to people everywhere during this pandemic.
Yes, and it's been fascinating to see how people in different countries come up with different solutions to some of these problems.
And that's it for this year's Global News Relay. Thank you for all the students, professors and technicians who helped put together this year's show. We hope to see you again next year.
And hopefully we'll all be COVID-free by then.
It's goodbye from here at Hong Kong Baptist University. And take care, everyone.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.